Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a video talking to you about the pistol I have here in my hands, but let me start by saying I apologize for the noise. Not only are we at a live range today, we've also got some rain noise going on, but these mics should be good enough to get us through this adversity, but we're going to go ahead and press on. So the pistol you see in front of you here, this is a Ballester-Molina 1911. So this one is chambered in 45 ACP. This is one of the domestically produced Argentinian 1911s. If you are familiar with Argentine 1911s, and let me also start by saying I never know which one is correct, Argentine versus Argentinian, so I'm probably going to use the two interchangeably. I apologize in advance if there's any Argentines or Argentinians out there who want to correct me. Please, by all means, yo quiero ser correcto. Entonces, esta pistola, this pistol, again, it's basically a standard 1911, but with some changes. The original 1911s, as I understand it, that Argentina used for their military and law enforcement were actually made under contract by Colt. But again, these are actual domestic Argentine 1911s. So let's go ahead and just start running over the outer features of these. And I should also say that this is not going to be like an in-depth review. This is more of an overview of the pistol. This to me is more of a collector piece as opposed to like a primary defense tool. So as opposed to like a 1,000-round review, this is just going to be kind of featuring what this pistol is in case you ever come across one in your local store. So again, a lot of the features here are going to be fairly standard 1911. So starting up front, we're going to have a pretty standard and pretty minimal blade sight, very reminiscent of the early 1911s, if you guys have seen any of those, or even like the 1911 A1s that were in service with the U.S. military for a long time. Just a really small front blade, and then a really small notch for the rear sight. So you can be very precise, as you'll see from some groups that I shot earlier today, but not exactly what we would consider combat sights by today's standards. Now, up front, we do have a very standard, like GI style takedown system. So we've got the barrel bushing up front with the little plunger. Maybe later in the video, I'll go through the disassembly of this thing, but it is effectively 100% just like a standard 1911 that you'd be familiar with today. Now, moving back, we do have some different markings to go along with the manufacturing here. So on the side, we have Ejército Argentino, obviously going to be in Spanish being Argentine. And then on the other side of here, we have Pistola Automática, and then it has the letter C, period, 11.25 millimeter, Fabrica por Haftasa, Patentes Internacionales, Ballester-Molina, Industria Argentina. So kind of your standard fare there. I'll roll in a close-up picture. Now, one of the immediately recognizable things, if you're familiar with 1911s when you look at this, is moving back on the slide here, we do have serrations, but on both sides we have interrupted serrations. So that's something that you're going to see across every example of these pistols that I've been able to find online. It does make it different. You can still get some good purchase on the slide, but not as positive as you would with, say, full serrations, again, that would be used to today, or even that you would see on the Colt variants of the same time period or modern production 1911s. So again, not my preference, but it is serviceable once you're used to it. Now moving back, fairly simple hammer mechanism here, so we don't have a skeletonized hammer or anything crazy like that. We do have a nice spur on it so that you can very easily manually cock it back to the rear if you needed to for whatever reason. So again, standard fare there if you're talking about early 20th century 1911s. And then one thing you'll probably notice as we move back here to the back strap and to the mainspring housing area, there is no grip safety. So this is one of the things that drew me to this 1911 kind of right out of the gate when I saw this thing in my local shop where I used to work, is I like the idea of a 1911, but I've never been a huge fan of the grip safety. So to me, getting a 1911 that eliminated the grip safety was kind of a best of both worlds type situation. So you don't have to worry about getting, it fully depressed if you're in a struggle or whatever else. You don't have to get a perfect grip on the pistol in order to get it to fire. So some people are going to love that. Some people are going to hate that. I'm on board for what that's worth. Now moving down to the heel, we do have a lanyard loop, pretty standard again for early 20th century military or law enforcement service pistols. I'm obviously not using this thing with any sort of lanyard. I don't know how much they were used in Argentina with a lanyard, but still they do have that lanyard loop there. Now moving on to the sides, the grip panels are very basic wood grip panels. As far as I'm aware, these are the original grip panels. I don't have any reason to expect otherwise. They do look to be of an age that is appropriate for the rest of the pistol. Now I can tell that whoever had this before or whatever armor was working on this before has taken these grip panels off at least a couple times because there is definitely some wear in the slots for the flathead screws. But again, it's still working just fine. We do have just the standard magazine release here on the side. So if you're used to 1911 manual of arms, it is still going to work just fine for that, as will everything else as far as this goes. So we do have the manual thumb safety here on this side. Obviously the hammer has to be cocked in order for the safety to be able to be operated. And with the safety on, you cannot manipulate the slide. So safety has to be off in order to manipulate it, again, just like a standard 1911. Now, the barrel profile, again, is very standard, like GI. Sometimes you see bull barrels on some of the more modern iterations of these things. But again, this is just like if you took like a Colt 1911, kind of the older models, and then just slapped a bunch of Spanish writing on the side instead of stuff from Colt. And then you've got obviously the Argentinian crest as opposed to a pony dancing on the side of your slide. So fairly standard again externally. The biggest difference is again being the interrupted serrations here and then the lack of a grip safety there on the back of the pistol. Now, as you'll see, this is not the original magazine that came with it. This is a modern Metgar 8-round magazine. The magazine that this thing came with, I do have, but it was having issues. It didn't want to lock open on the last round fired. Again, I don't know if that's anachronistic, if that was something that's just happened over the years of use with this pistol, or if that's just how they were, but it does work with modern magazines. Most of the footage, if not all of the footage you're going to see of me shooting this thing is with this Metgar 8-round magazine. It does lock open, it does operate just fine with that magazine, so it is going to be usable with any of your full-size modern 1911 magazines. Now, I did mention the accuracy earlier, so let's go ahead and cut to some footage earlier today of me shooting a 5-round group with these sights at a target at 7 yards. It's actually about the same size group overall, except my flyer is down in this case versus to the right, and my cloverleaf is not quite as tight with this newer, more modern 1911. Do with that what you will. So as you can see, very, very respectable accuracy. Again, this is as accurate, if not more accurate than I am as a shooter. The 1 round flyer that we had was definitely me. It was not the gun. So if you know what you're doing, this gun can definitely put rounds where they need to go. Now, the issue is with those style of kind of the older style pistol sights, while you can be very precise, it's very hard to be quick with them. So if you're just trying to get a snap sight picture, or you're trying to do anything in low light, or God forbid, no light, you're gonna have a really hard time doing anything like that. That's where modern sights have really started to take the edge there. Now, I don't know, again, if this is something that was done by an armor or some owner prior to me, but I could definitely tell that they tried to drift this rear sight because there's definitely some nice punch marks on the side of the slide there. And there is just kind of a nice patina and appearance of wear over the whole gun. I kind of dig it. It just, to me, adds to the aesthetic of one of these old service pistols like this one. Again, maybe not for everyone, but I kind of dig it, and it's not actively rusting anywhere, so that is a good thing. But let me go ahead and get into the disassembly of this. I'm not going to use any tools because I don't need to with this one. I have taken this apart before, but just like again with a standard GI 1911, we've got the barrel bushing up here. So we've got this little kind of plunger button. I'm going to push that in and then push that mainspring housing off, or push the barrel bushing off to the side there. Hopefully you can see this. I got to keep this pointed in roughly a safe direction. So I'm going to again push down on the button, push that bushing around to the side. That'll allow me to take that pin out, or the little plunger out with the spring. Just going to stuff that in a pocket for now. That will then allow me to, I can pop the barrel bushing out, I guess, while I'm at it. Now I'm going to have to take it to the rear takedown notch. Now, let me try to do this again in a way that's conducive. Now on modern 1911s, usually you'll see the slot for the slide lock, and then there's another little notch for taking the slide lock out. That's also holding everything in together. With this, it's just the one notch, so you get it to where the slide lock point is. I'm just going to push on the other end of that lever here, and that will allow me to remove that piece there. Again, going in the old pocket. Now the slide is just going to come off the gun. That was the guide rod, so let me grab that. So again, guide rod, that's what the spring goes around on the inside. Again, standard 1911 style. It's always hard doing this not on top of a table, but for simplicity, we're going to do it this way. Again, this is field stripped for the frame, so I'm just going to set that down. And then with the barrel, I'm going to just push that little lever down, pull that out of the front, and that is fully field stripped. Again, if you're used to a GI 1911, we're all dealing with the same stuff here. So just put it back together, slide the barrel back in. I'm going to lay the guide rod down against the barrel. Also going to, it's also fun doing it all by feeling in my pocket, get the barrel bushing back in and then walk that around. And I'm going to just get this in place around the guide rod there. And I'm going to slide all this back on. And then take my takedown lever, somewhere in my pocket, put it back through, making sure it goes through the little hinge piece in the barrel. And then I'm just going to take, I don't know, I'm covering it up here, straight back in, let the slide go back forward, push that plunger in, rotate the barrel bushing back to the side, and now we have a fully reassembled 1911. Now, I guess if you're curious, there is no magazine disconnect safety. Some of you out here are going to hate me doing this, but so you can fire the gun without a magazine inserted, which I think is a good thing. There's also no lawyer marks anywhere on this. It doesn't say anything about reading the manual before you go out to the range with this thing, or saying anything about will fire with the magazine removed. We're just going to when you could just assume a level of common sense that maybe doesn't exist today. Now, my thoughts on this pistol as a defensive tool versus as a collector piece. To me, a gun like this is going to appeal to a lot of people because of the price that these things usually come in at. Now, this is just a snapshot in time, so this could vary greatly by the time you're watching this video, depending on when you're watching it. But these are very affordable as far as like old service 1911s go. Now, if you find some of the older 1927 models from Argentina, again, those, as I understand it, were made by Colt. So those might get a little bit more money for those things, but with something like this, you can still get it fairly affordably. I don't want to throw numbers out there, but well under $1,000. So that's going to make it very appealing to some of the more budget-minded people out there who want a 1911 but don't want to get a cheaply produced one. But that being said, I don't necessarily think that this is a great choice as a primary defensive tool. Now, the reasons for that are the reasons why 1911s A, in general, are not great as a defensive tool, and B, why modern 1911s have made a lot of changes from something like this. So first thing is going to be size and weight for the capacity. So we've got a large full-size pistol that holds 8 rounds. Now I know a lot of people are going to say, well, 8 rounds of 45 is plenty, but my typical carry gun, which is a Sig Sauer P365X macro, I can have 18 rounds of 9mm with lights, optics, all that kind of stuff, no problem whatsoever on the pistol. And with the studies that have been done by the FBI and several other law enforcement agencies, the difference in terminal ballistics with modern ammo is negligible. So I'd rather have 18 rounds with less recoil and faster follow-up shots, better sights, ability to mount the light, etc. to it, than a large full-size pistol that's shooting just a fatter round. Again, I know not everyone's going to out there agree with me, but even then, if you did say you wanted a 1911 and 45 ACP, having something with sights that are going to be easily replaceable, especially something with tritium or fiber optics, that's going to make it easier for you to use in low light or no light if you're using tritium, you're going to be a lot better off. The other thing is the internal components on this thing, especially one that you find in your local pawn shop or local gun store, are going to be very likely worn out. So I have had a couple malfunctions with this, but I would say it's probably mostly attributed to a recoil spring that hasn't been replaced since this thing was manufactured way back in the day. So if you were to get something like this, obviously function test it, but I would also replace going over to Wolf Springs and maybe get kind of a rejuvenation kit to make sure that you're operating under the best possible circumstances with something like this. But again, I would say if you're looking for a serious defensive tool, maybe there's going to be some better options out there for you. But I still think that these are a really cool thing to have as part of your collection, especially if you're just into 1911s. Maybe you're into collecting specifically military handguns or South American military handguns, whatever your niche is. These are at an affordable enough price and still, I think, cool enough to maybe justify a spot in your collection. Now, again, if it were me and I wanted a serious defensive 1911, maybe something like this where I can have a flashlight and, you know, all the other accoutrements that make a 1911 far more utilitarian, like, you know, tritium sights and etc. That is an option as well. But again, I know some people just love that classic look and maybe want that classic look, especially without that beaver tail grip safety. So again, do with that information what you will. Now, if you have one of these or have experience with this or like the 1927 models from Argentina, definitely let me know and throw your experience down in the description below. Again, if people are looking into these, there's not a ton of information out there about them. So the more information we can accumulate into one spot, the better. So definitely throw your experience down below. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go and throw those in the comments down below as well. I want to say thanks to my patrons for helping to make a video like this one possible. I did pay for this pistol as well as all the ammunition that I put through it. Maybe cumulatively I put about 300 rounds through it. So nothing too crazy, but just enough to get a feel for the pistol and my thoughts on it. But again, all that is possible due to the contributions that I get over on Patreon. That's why I post all my content over there early. We do some exclusive content. We're going to be doing monthly live streams again here soon. So if you're over on Patreon, definitely look out. I think I've got the dates figured out, but I want to iron things out with you guys first. But if any of that sounds interesting to you or you just want to financially support the channel, definitely follow the links down in the description below. But anyway, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.